However, we've got our own Mike Seidel in Mankato. He is on the southwest side of Minneapolis. And Mike, yeah, you're really into it now. I know you moved your position here, and by moving your position, we can really get a feel and a look for what's going on right now. What's the latest? I can see visibility's gone down quite a bit, and the snow's coming down sideways.
That's the way it's going to be the rest of today until it winds down dinner time this evening. Winds now gusting 30 to 35 miles an hour. We moved from downtown, which is in a valley out here by the mall, and it's just howling out here. We're not up to 35, which is blizzard classification. You have to have that, and visibility less than a quarter mile or less for 3 hours. So we'll see if we get it. If we don't, we still have incredible visual out here. You can see this is US 14, where it meets up with Minnesota 22, and not a whole lot of traffic today. Schools are closed, and I'm sure a lot of businesses have thrown in the towel too because of the snow and blowing snow in the forecast of a foot or more. What you see behind me, these piles, this is from snow earlier in the season. But consider the fact that Minneapolis running a deficit of 17 inches. To my east, Rochester was running a deficit of 9 inches before this storm. Goes to show you that even with these piles, they're still running behind. And there was no snow on the ground until 7:30 this morning, because the past 4 days it's been in the low 40s up here versus where it should be in the mid-20s. So hour by hour we go, and again, winds cranking up 35 to 40 mile an hour gusts, maybe a little bit higher. We're not expecting those 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts we had in Kansas, which are continuing this morning. Thus they extended the blizzard warning in western Kansas until lunchtime today. But the snow will wind down this evening. And then look at the 5-day forecast. For a change, thank goodness, I think most people are happy. We're not seeing another Arctic air mass plunging in behind the storm. So temperatures tomorrow and Wednesday will be average, mid-20s for highs. And then end of the week, Ray, we're back up above freezing. So like a springtime storm here, 30 degrees and snowing. You know, if you get out of the wind and out of the snow, it's not that bad. He says with confidence.
All right, Mike, and a quick question for you, too. I know it's hard to measure, but what do you think? What do we've got for a snowfall rate per hour? Because it looks like you've coated the ground quite a bit over the past couple of hours.
Yeah, this is pushing about an inch an hour. We've got, well, this isn't a good measure. We've got about 2 inches so far. We're pushing 2 inches of snow. Again, it started at 32 degrees. Now we're at 30, so the consistency is going to dry up a little bit, but can still make a pretty good snowball. There you go. But the wind, yeah, just sideways. It's going to be like this all day long.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. And be careful with that snowball. Don't throw it at anybody that you want to stay your friend. Mike Seidel reporting to us from Mankato in Minnesota. And you can see, we've seen Mike Seidel this morning, and he's been in it. Like, I don't know about blizzard conditions, but, you know, a common person will look at you and say, well, it looks like a blizzard out there. What's the latest?
Yeah, we call this near blizzard conditions because we have the wind. We have gusts to 36 miles an hour now, Ray, but the snowfall visibility is now at the airport a half a mile. We need to be a quarter mile or less. So we're just not quite there, but on camera, and if you're out in it, it feels like a blizzard. The good thing about this is the temperatures are very mild. We're at 30, 31 degrees, so it's a fairly wet, compactable snow, and not like some of these blizzards I've covered in Fargo and Bismarck and even here in Minnesota, where it's in the single numbers and the wind chills are below zero. This is much more pliable as far as being out in it. Look at the folks that are out in it. Not a lot of traffic today because schools are closed. I'm sure a lot of businesses are closed. We're out on the northeast side of town near the mall. We moved out here after being downtown and trying to get out here to show you what it looks like when you're out in the plains and upper Midwest, and there is nothing to stop this wind coming right at me, sustained at about 20 miles an hour. Roads are snow-packed and snow-covered. The plows cannot keep up with the snowfall rate, so they do the best they can. Everybody taking it nice and easy. It looks like they're doing about 25 to 30 miles an hour. Remember, extra distance because you may need to brake, and just slow down. We don't need to see folks in ditches and running off the road. Of course, up here they're used to this, although big snowfall deficit. Minneapolis down 17 inches going into this storm, and they still haven't flaked at MSP yet, believe it or not. Boy, what a tight gradient. Here it's going to snow through the afternoon. Snow and blow winds will eventually gust 35, I should say 40 miles an hour plus. We're not going to get the extreme gust we saw back back into parts of Kansas of over 60 miles an hour, but still plenty windy, plenty snowy, a foot of snow or more, south central and southwest Minnesota. This is where we have the blizzard warning, Mankato and the southwest counties back towards Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So, Ray, it's a pretty good storm by my accounts after covering this for 26 years, and it's a pleasure to cover a blizzard when the wind chill isn't 15 or 20 below zero. Trust me, from experience.
Yeah, well, actually, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you've got 31, 32 degrees, right around freezing, and the winds are howling, the snow's flying. What do you think your wind chill is? Maybe into the teens or the 20s?
Yeah, it's upper teens, and you can see you can still make a pretty good snowball. Not quite as compactable as it was this morning, but the advantage of this is it doesn't blow as much because it kind of sits still on the ground. If it was a powdery snow, you take the temperature from 30, 31 down to 26 or 27, then you're looking at a whole different ball game with the blowing and drifting. Not that we're not going to have some, but this really lowers the impact of the amount of snow that's moved by this howling wind.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike, and I think you'll see a change to that as we go through the next probably couple of hours. Thanks, Mike Seidel, as he's reporting on the snow, and maybe it's 45. All right, and this associated with a front attached to Winter Storm Jackson, where our own Mike Seidel is covering the wintry side. Mike.
Yeah, Ray, this is like a spring storm out here because their temperature is right around 30 or 31. It's not abnormally cold. In fact, the average high today in Minneapolis is 24. Speaking of Minneapolis, at the airport, they've canceled now about 250 flights, about 20% of all departures. But it still hasn't flaked there. I just checked, and the snow has still not gotten up to Bloomington on the south side of the Twin Cities. So this is a really sharp cutoff, and we're about 70 miles from the airport off to the northeast. In that direction is MSP. Look at the wind and the snow out here. Boy, it is blowing, howling out here. We're gusting 35, close to 40 miles an hour. Visibility is down to about a half a mile officially. Down in Fairmount, they're down to a quarter mile and 36 mile an hour gusts. So they're verifying a blizzard at least for 1 hour. We'll see. You have to have 3 hours in a row. So, Ray, a big difference as you head south of the Twin Cities down towards I-90 in this part of the state right now.
All right, Mike, thanks a lot. And
up to a foot of snow before it's all said and done. Meteorologist Mike Seidel is keeping an eye on Jackson for us in Mankato, Minnesota, and joins us now.
Hey guys, yes, out here we're snowing and blowing now. Winds gusting here in the southwest part of the state, 35 to 40 miles an hour. Visibility's a quarter to a half a mile. We're about 70 miles southwest of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport, whereas a few minutes ago I checked, it has not started snowing there. It's going to be a very tight have and have-nots. We're certainly in the have category, but the have-nots, it won't be that far away between no snow and several inches of snow and even a foot of snow. The temperatures are the promising thing out here. I've covered many snowstorms, blizzards out here in the Dakotas and Minnesota where the wind chills have been, 10, 15 below zero, temperatures single numbers in teens. Right now we're sitting at 31 and the wind chills in the upper teens. So from that angle, it's a lot easier to take. But you can see the roadways. We do have some traffic out here, the intersection of 14 and 22 on the northeast side of Mankato. But the visibility is way, way down due to this wind and snow. It's going to continue through the afternoon as temperatures will slowly drop into the upper 20s by dinner time. Winds will gust 35 to 40 miles an hour. We could have some thunder snow. There was a lot of lightning back in northwest parts of Iowa. But the other good thing about this storm is once it leaves us, it's not going to drag down a big batch of, just numbing air from the Arctic. We've seen that, 3 or 4 times since Christmas and before Christmas. But now we're in a more Pacific origin of air. And so as a result, temperatures the next couple of days following the storm will be pretty much typical, mid-20s here in Minnesota, and then we go above freezing as we get into Thursday and Friday. So the cleanup will be easier, and you'll be able to get around without really the risk of that very dangerous cold and frostbite. Greg?
All right, Mike, thank you so much.
Welcome back to Mankato, Minnesota. We're 70 miles southwest of Minneapolis-St. Paul, where, by the way, it just started snowing the past hour. Look at this. The wind and the snow gusting upwards of 40 miles an hour with moderate to heavy snow blowing off this big rig. And this gentleman has pulled over and decided to take a break because the travel on these roadways is basically They're telling people not to travel. We do have some travelers out here, some locals. We're near the mall. Last check, the mall is open. We'll see how many employees make it in. But look at the visibility out here at 14 and 22 on the northeast side of Mankato. Down at a half a mile or less. The wind is howling through these trees. Fortunately, not a lot of snow sticking to the limbs. It's drying out a little bit. Earlier it was a heavy wet snow. Now it's more of a powdery snow, and it's getting harder to make a snowball, which means that the risk of blowing and drifting will increase through the afternoon into this evening as the snow winds down. Greg?
So major low visibility out there by Mike. Thank you so much, by the way. And done. Meteorologist Mike Seidel is keeping an eye on Jackson for us in Mankato, Minnesota. And he joins us now. Mike, to you.
Hey guys, yeah, we're in the thick of it here in Mankato, the southwest part of the state. We are about 70 miles southwest of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. As you just heard, it is now beginning to snow in the Twin Cities. But again, north side of town will not do as well as the south side of town. Down here, we're doing great. If you love snow and wind, we've got about 4 inches on the ground so far. Winds gusting 35 to 40 miles an hour. You can see what that does to the visibility. We've got blowing snow, not a lot of drifting snow because the snowfall is coming down at about 30 degrees. I want to take you back, though, to this morning before sunrise. We were downtown, and we kicked off for coverage at 6 a.m. Eastern in the dark and with no snow falling. But here's a bit of a time lapse showing my live coverage. And as we went through the morning, after 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 here, it did start to snow. It started to pick up. The ground got white. Remember, there was no snow on the ground here because we had 4 days in a row in the 40s. That ended today. And then as we got into the mid-morning, late morning, we moved out here, and basically this is what you see. Winds consistently sustained at over 20, even 25 miles an hour. The wind chill right now 16. So as blizzards go in this part of the world, the temperatures are relatively comfortable. I've covered a lot of storms out here and in the Dakotas where wind chills are down below zero and temperatures are 5 to 10 degrees. So being out in this, it's not nearly as uncomfortable as it would be in those conditions. With that said, it's going to snow and blow through the afternoon. The snow will wind down tonight. The sun comes out tomorrow. We're going to be in the mid-20s. No Arctic air behind this front. Hallelujah. You know, you can get out and do some snow skiing, maybe some snowmobiling, and you won't have to worry about as much about the frostbite. And then as we get into Thursday and Friday, we're going to see temperatures back to and above average and back in the mid-30s by Friday ahead of that next cold front on Saturday night. And that'll bring in colder air by Sunday. So you get a sense, guys, that this is the way it's going to be for a while. It's howling out here, and it's blowing too pretty good. Visibility is down to about a quarter to a half a mile. We'll see if we verify a blizzard. Nearby Fairmount, southwest of here at I-90, is in that category. They've got heavy snow and winds gusting 36 miles an hour. So, Mark, it's not bad. I'm layered up. It's stinging my face a little bit, but compared to wind chills of 10 to 20 below zero, I'll take this any day of the week.
There you go. It's all about perspective, and what we just went through, Mike, that actually is pretty balmy compared.
Said and done. Now, meteorologist Mike Seidel is keeping an eye on Jackson for us in Mankato, Minnesota. He's joining us now. Mike, how is it out there?
Well, you can see it's wild out here. Winds gusting at times close to 40 miles an hour, and the visibility now down to about a quarter mile. It's even hard to make out the overpass. This is US 22, which goes under. I should say US 14, which goes over Minnesota Route 22. But look at the visibility out here. If we pan over to the highway, you can't even see the highway now because of the snow and the blowing snow. This is as bad as it's been all morning. This is almost a whiteout. I can hardly see the ramp over here. This is coming off US 14, but the wind just howling through the parking lot here versus where we were downtown, which is a little bit more protected because of the valley structure of Mankato. But that's the highway out there. You can see the wrong way sign on the ramp, but I cannot really make out traffic anymore. So the visibility has definitely come down to a quarter, maybe an eighth of a mile out here. Temperature's still hanging on at 30 degrees. Wind chill 16. That is the good thing about this storm. But you can see what's going on when you have wind blowing around these obstacles. You go from bare ground to about 2 feet of snow. So we are getting some drifting. It's still kind of packable. So it's not blowing as much as it could if the temperature was, say, just 3 or 4 degrees colder. Back out on 22, we've got traffic moving. Some of these guys are going, guys and gals going a little too fast, I think, because it doesn't take much just to go off the road. I don't care if you have all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. The roads are snow-packed and snow-covered, and they're going to stay that way. The snowfall rate is at least 1 inch an hour, Greg, and it's going to do this into the middle and latter part of the afternoon. Then the snow intensity will back off. But temperatures, next several days, average. Mid-20s for highs. We'll take it after all the Arctic air we've seen across the eastern part of the country since before Christmas. Greg, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mike.
Good afternoon from Mankato, Minnesota. Actually, still, I guess, late morning here in the Midwest. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. Near whiteout conditions here. You can hardly see US 14. There's a ramp, vehicle coming down the ramp right now. But the combination of wind gusts of 35 to 40 miles an hour and snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches an hour and horizontal snow, it's just tough to get around. In fact, they're urging people and advising against any travel in this part of the state right now because of what you see here live on the Weather Channel. The temperature is not bad. I mean, considering it's mid-January and how cold it's been here, it's 30 degrees. It's dropped a couple of degrees, so the texture of the snow has dried out a little bit, so that'll make it easier to blow and drift around. We've got the blizzard warning continuing until later on this evening, but it's not so much this road, but the backcountry roads that aren't getting plowed. You just can't see anything because this whole area is the Midwest, the plains. It's relatively flat, Greg, and, you know, there's nothing to stop the wind and the snow. By the way, I can't see a thing through these glasses. I need wipers on these glasses. Now I can see a whole lot better, but it's going to continue like this until about dinner time, and then things will begin to back off here in this part of the state. Greg?
All right, Mike, thank you so much. The good news is they'll actually start to see some warmer weather roll on in even in the back half of this low pressure system. Said and done. We've got meteorologist Mike Seidel, and he's keeping an eye on Jackson for us in Mankato, Minnesota. He joins us now, and it looks like it's kind of kicked on up a little bit more over there, Mike.
Well, indeed, the wind is howling out here, guys, gusting 40 miles an hour. And the wind, combined with a snowfall rate of at least 1 inch an hour, causes the whiteout conditions, or near whiteout conditions. We can still see about 100 yards. So that's about it. Up to the highway here, the overpass 14 over 22, northeast side of Mankato. Temperature holding at 30. That's a good thing because it's not, you know, it's not deadly cold out here like we've seen in recent weeks in this part of the world. In fact, a lot of the U.S., eastern third of the U.S., Midwest, getting some Arctic outbreaks. But on the backside of this one, we're going to be fine. We're going to be in the mid-20s the next couple days, so it'll be easy to clean up. Schools are closed. Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport now just checking 289 flights canceled. That's departures and arrivals. Expect delays, and if you're canceled, hopefully you'll get a flight out tomorrow. I just checked on our behalf, our flights, and there are a lot of flights already sold out because people are jumping or being moved to flights tomorrow because of the impact today up at MSP, and a lot of these are canceled earlier because of what was coming in, even though the snow didn't start at the airport there until about a little after 10 a.m. Central Time. Out here, though, it's going to snow and blow. We've got the blizzard warning up through this evening. The snow will begin to back off around dinner time, and then it's just the wind. But again, you get out into these areas, there's nothing. Now, I'm looking at right here, and it's like I can't see anything. It's just like a virtual, it's a whiteout. I can't see across the road. The snow's coming right in on my face. I can see maybe 50 yards. That is about it. So that gives you an idea of how bad it is out here right now. Even if the snow rate backs off, the fact that the snow is drying out and will continue to dry out by evening, we're going to have more blowing and drifting with these wind gusts. And maybe, Greg, if we're lucky enough, we'll get some thunder snow. We still see occasional lightning bolts down in northern parts of Iowa.
I'm not ruling it out, Mike. I'm not ruling it out. All right, all said and done. Meteorologist Mike Seidel is keeping an eye on Jackson for us in Mankato, Minnesota. And he joins us now. Mike, how you doing out there?
Well, things have backed off briefly. You can look at the radar. We're in a bit of a sucker hole right over Mankato, so the intensity has lessened. As a result, we can actually see the shopping center across Route 22 here. Look at that. We couldn't see that for the past 2 hours. So the visibility has now come up about a mile and a half or so, but in the distance in the open farmland, I know you can't see this on camera, but with the naked eye, you can see how the wind is just blowing the snow across these open lands here northeast of downtown Mankato. Our temperature is holding at 30 and the wind chill's 15. Now the thing you want to note here, and I can tell you from my experience of 25 plus years of covering snowstorms and blizzards in this part of the world in mid-January, the dead of winter, that it usually isn't this mild. This is more like a snowstorm in Minneapolis, say in March or even April, but to have a temperature of 30 or 31 during a snowstorm is unusual. Typically you're in the teens or colder. I've covered snowstorms in Fargo and Bismarck where the wind chill is 15 below zero, and it's a whole different world, as you can imagine, versus a wind chill of 15. So the visibility has come up briefly. We do have some traffic out here. Schools, of all things, are closed in Mankato. That doesn't happen very often. I just checked the Minnesota DOT map, and I-90 is open. I-90 is open, but travel is discouraged basically on all the highways in the southwest corner of the state of Minnesota. And I just got in touch with Janelle Klein, our reporter who will be covering the storm from the Minneapolis suburbs, the south suburbs, starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. And she tells me they're driving down I-35 out of Minneapolis, and they're doing about 30 miles an hour. That's how bad the roads are, Greg. That's what happens when you have the snow and the blowing snow. And it's a good thing to slow down. Braking distance, the key in any kind of wintertime driving.
Yeah,
Greg?
thank you so much, Mike.